The next session, titled Reviving Up Your Revenue Strategies for Nailing Your Go-to-Market Plan, will focus on business strategies and optimize your GTM and eventually increase sales and revenue growth. Panelists will talk about practical tips, best practices for creating a successful GTM plan. I would like to invite Maneesh Bhandari, founder and CEO Growthpal, Reena Mary, brand strategy leader Kyndryl, as panelists for this discussion, and Nishant Jain as co-founder for BizAcuity Service Solution Private Limited to moderate this discussion.
Hello. Thank you. I just want to ask everybody, how was the food? So hands up, please, if food was good. Oh, so a lot of guys are awake. So, good. Yeah, now I see that all of you are awake. That's great. And thank you, Vijay, for kind of helping me in keeping you awake. So session now, so it helps me that I don't have to work harder on it. And I think the topic of the session, I think first I'd like to request Maneesh and Reena to maybe take a few seconds and 30 seconds, introduce yourself, please.
Check. Hi, I'm Reena Mary. I'm the brand strategy leader for Kyndryl, which is a startup at scale, I would say. We kind of broke away from a legacy company, so I do understand how it feels to be flexible, and that's what we believe in, flat focused and moving ahead with times. So that's a short, brief description about myself. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Reena.
Hi, my name is Maneesh Bhandari. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Growthpal, where we help clients build pipeline for mergers and acquisitions. My background is largely being an entrepreneur. I started in the technology, in the IT sector with Citigroup, but very quickly changed the tables and became an entrepreneur. So last 25 years have done it in a different capacities and also been an investor in a lot of companies, mostly startups. So that's largely my background.
Thank you, Maneesh. So the topic of the session being revving up your revenues and how to nail the GTM strategy. So I think a lot has been kind of discussed or shared in initial sessions, especially with Dr. Anand Deshpande. And so that's been a great, I would say, while being here, what I realized that sales and GTM, and we had so many questions on that. So I think that was helpful, and we'd like maybe spend this session on kind of diving a bit deeper into it and see if we can help you to kind of answer some of the questions which you have in your mind while you go through the process. And we'd like to keep the session engaging. So we would kind of cover discuss few topics and then open it up to Q&A, where we would love to kind of have questions from the panel, answer questions, and then we'll do that. So I think just a small kind of observation I have is that while we were Chetan Bhai and the NASSCOM team, while they were trying to conduct, have this session, we were expecting maybe X number of attendees, registrations, but this morning I got to know that we have surpassed that by 2X, and and kind of we have to stop the registrations because we had not had enough capacity to have more registrations. So it's a very classic example of I would say the topic which we are dealing with today. It's like marketing, branding, sales. So NASSCOM team did a great job. I think just a correlation analogy there. So I would really, it's a great thing. And so having said that, I think like one of the thing which we wanted to start with was we have this large canvas of marketing, branding, initiatives, programs which we run in our organization. And so what I would request Reena to, if she can, given the audience what we have today, it's more on SME side with companies ranging from, could be a million to 20 million, 30 million. So I would request if you can kind of give us a color on what is that kind of program at a very high level on marketing and branding which SMEs should be looking at.
Yeah, I think the fundamental thing is to really find what your purpose is, right? So it starts from figuring out what the brand purpose is and what's the need that you're satisfying of your customer, trying to really understand the lay of the land, what's the market size. Based on that, you kind of figure out what's the differentiation that you have. And sometimes it could be that you are a me too, but probably the way you position yourself could be the differentiator over there. So I think really planning out this marketing strategy, bringing out the brand narrative, the brand voice, the way you speak to your audience matters. The brand visual identity helps you, like when you see the swoosh of Nike, just do it, you remember. Sometimes you just don't even have to say just do it. So that's how brands are really created in mind. It takes time, but I think what's the purpose? Why do you want to go ahead with this? Now, I think for SMEs, as I see, probably you don't need really large budgets, but you need to have a clear-cut marketing strategy, how you want to go about it. And I think planning that across the whole year would help, and then tweaking it accordingly, according to your buyers or your consumers' life cycle, right? I think that would help in my perspective.
Yeah, just taking a cue from what you said. So, like as we understand that marketing would kind of cover, we are saying branding, right? Storytelling, messaging,
Yes.
Awareness creation, and like eventually leading to demand generation.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
and I think also keeping the brand on today, I think you could really use social very effectively. What we say, being always on online. So how your story is being told, drive with thought leadership, engage with your audience, listen, because sometimes you get nuggets of wisdoms over there, and then work around your strategy. And so I think there's a lot that you can do. But it just needs a little bit of planning and finding out what's the purpose. It all starts with what the purpose is and what the differentiation is.
Sure. And Maneesh, if I can ask you that, let's say we have different categories of SMEs here with us today, again, at different sizes. So any kind of, what kind of programs could these SMEs look at from at different sizes? Because at a startup, we have a different kind of priorities to get first few sales done, right? At a later stage, we have different priorities. So if you could please share something.
Right, sure. So for simplicity's sake, I would kind of divide the SME segment into 3 categories. The first one being, let's call it more of a startup category, where in IT services, perhaps up to $3 million of revenue. In product space, perhaps companies which have not yet achieved product market fit, right? Now, this category of companies or this segment, in my opinion, it's largely founder driven. The sales are done by founders. The marketing, whether it's the vision, the positioning, the differentiation, the content, has to come from the founders, right? You can always hire somebody professional to polish it, but outsourcing it to somebody else who is going to come up with your positioning, your messaging at this stage of the business, I think is very unrealistic. So it has to be the entire thing has to show the founder's vision, and founder's personality sort of comes through it, right? The second category I would put companies who have in the IT services space, let's say up to $10 million, where they have established themselves at least in one practice area, right? Could be, let's say, somebody is doing well in Salesforce or digital transformation or whatever it is, where they have establish their capability in that space, right? In the product companies, these would be the ones who have achieved product market fit, right? And here you have to invest in sales and marketing. You don't necessarily need to have a well-oiled engine, but you need to have a sales team that you as a founders are working with. You need to have various marketing programs, and I think marketing is something where you have to keep experimenting, right? There is no silver bullet that you do this one thing and you'll achieve results, right? You have to experiment and figure out what is it that's working for you, which is starting to show some results. Do more of it, put more money into it, right? The third category is where you have established, now it's about scale, right? So let's just call it for this, the SME segment, 10 plus million for the IT services, and for product companies, again, just building scale, right? Now here you need to really have a well-oiled sales marketing engine because it's all about scale, right? It's not just scale, even sustaining yourself at that level of revenue and then scaling it is quite challenging, right? And I'll just give my own example from a kind of why investing in marketing is so important, that the Growthpal is about 3-year-old business, and like I said, we build pipeline for mergers and acquisitions. In just a period of 3 years, we have probably become the largest player in carrying the buy-side mandates. Now, 90% of these came through just simple, cold, outbound emails, right? We hired one junior person. We defined what is the target customer looks like for us. And she started finding those clients, finding emails for the founders and CEOs, and just sending the standard cookie cutter email, right? And 90% of these clients converted just through that, right?
Sure.
But we realized that that's going to hit ceiling at some point. So we started investing in other marketing channels, right? And it took 10 months to get the convert first inbound lead, right? But we did that recently, and that has given us the largest revenue till date, right?
Sure.
So I couldn't emphasize more the value of marketing and investing in it, and you have to have patience, right? We are not measuring after 3 months, hey, why has we not gotten any inbound which has converted, right? It happened after 10 months.
All right, and absolutely right. I can relate to what Maneesh was saying, that even for us, just an example that from a marketing side, we have to have patience, we have to have a process-driven thing, and the inbound leads are very sticky, and that's a real they have a need, then they have come to you. Otherwise, it's other way around. You're trying to reach 1,000 people, spraying campaigns, but that would give you a very small percentage of conversion. But if your marketing is good, and if you're reaching out to some guys and they're coming back to asking for some or inbound, the inbound value is very high. So I think if Reena would kind of agree or add anything to this, please.
Yeah, I think it kind of works out, and it's like you said, it's a well-oiled machine. You need to keep it going and tweak it accordingly, as you need to keep your ears on the ground as well. And I think you need to invest that time, because brand is an investment. It's not an immediate that you pick up something, you buy something and you get an immediate. It's built over time, but you would see that value in probably a couple of years, or might be in a year as well. But it's an investment not only for the business, but for the people that are working within, and the image that the company carries across. So what is the greater purpose? So I think that's where it kind of all comes across.
Yeah. And the entire ecosystem, you have employees, you have customers, stakeholders, vendors. Everybody would like to work with a kind of a known brand, right? Some marketing that leaves a kind of a good impression there, that's valuable for the entire ecosystem. So I'd like to kind of jump quickly onto a little tougher question here, right? So what's that? I think Reena, when we were kind of discussing what all we are going to cover, and Reena said, okay, that's a difficult one, right? But still, I'd like to go for it. So what's the budget, right? I think, I don't know, all of us have that question in our mind when we run a company which could be 100, 200, 500 people. So what is that budget for marketing, which is there any like industry experience, some back of the envelope thing, what we should be looking at? And just a second part of the question is that what is that outcome we should be targeting? Right? If I spend say a 20 lakh rupee per month or a 50 lakh rupee per month, what's that outcome which we should be looking at, please?
I think it depends on what the outcome that you want to drive. There's no hard and fast thumb rule, I would say. But actually focusing on what you want to achieve, and then probably having a quarter-wise kind of a spend. Have a yearly plan, but a quarter-wise where you would like to probably up your budget at certain levels, and might be at certain levels you can just keep the marketing budget going on. I think that's where I would look at it, but to give you a figure, it would be difficult.
I know, I agree. Yeah, Maneesh, would you like to ask?
So I'll start with asking a question to the audience. That how many of you know your customer acquisition cost? The cost it takes to acquire one new customer, and that should include cost of everything, your own time, value of your time, the marketing team or the sales people, the website, everything. How many of you, can you please raise your hands, who have a number in your mind, how much you spend on that? Hardly anyone, right? I think that's probably the first problem you have to look at, right? I'll give a counter example. Look at all the consumer-facing companies like Zomatos of the world, Paytms, right? They were measured from the very first quarter on what is their customer acquisition cost and what is the lifetime value of their customers, right? And I think there are a lot of stories about a lot of these businesses who didn't survive because their customer acquisition costs were very, very high, right? So I think it's a very difficult to answer budget, but I like to start with you are all of you are acquiring customers, right? Start looking at first what is that cost. The second is the kind of, I look at what is your target for this year. Let's say you have a target to get 10 new customers,
sure.
Right? Now, what has been your historical conversion rate? That do you talk to 10 prospects and convert one? If so, then you need 100 very highly qualified leads to convert to 10 customers, right? Now, again, historically, how many leads gives you qualified customer, right? If that's 3:1, then that's like 300. Now, if you consult any good marketing person, they'll probably guide you on, okay, if you have to get 300 leads, what are the different channels you can use, what is the cost per channel, per lead, etc. And you can perhaps come up with some budget.
I think it works backward that way, and that's where we can come up with a plan and how much budget would work. So if you have what's in mind, I think then you can work backward, and you could work more effectively with different mediums. Sometimes an integrated campaign also kind of builds in that value, I would say, for the brand. You could use social, you could use other traditional media as well, but it all depends on your target audience, right? So it's, that is very important over here.
No, sure. And so is that some one-line summary correct, that saying that there is no one, so even as large as enterprise where Kyndryl you are, right, and whatever could be like, let's say a mid-size SME doing. So the program runs similar, right? The budget gets like lower budget, but the programs, we have to run the similar programs.
Absolutely. Sometimes you do get a lower budget, but you still have to perform at that level, and that's where you look at the effectiveness of the medium that you want to take across. And it's all about optimization also over there.
Yeah. And we all kind of would agree that it's not a very high cost unless we really want to boost up a lot in a very short time. Because we have that advantage of a price being back in India, like working out of India with cost of people is not very high. So we can kind of have bigger team in running things a little more in a larger scale. Right. Great. So I think
just 2 cents there would be that I agree with you that it's not a very high cost necessarily, but I would emphasize that the founders or the core team has to be very actively engaged in the process. You can't say that, okay, the total cost, I'm going to budget 5%, and I'm going to outsource it, or I'm going to hire a team and they're going to do magic.
Sure.
Right? You have to be actively involved as a founders or the core team.
Right. And I think just going by, share my experience there, that we did a lot of mistakes in the last 10 years. And if I can count on a couple of mistakes here. So the first mistake which we did back in around 7 or 8 years back was we thought that, okay, sales can be sorted if we hire a good sales guy, right? So we hired at that time, it was expensive for us, so I think we paid 40 lakhs per annum, right? And it was a disaster, complete disaster, because sales cannot happen with one person and one thing. It's an entire ecosystem that has to work to give you sales. And it was not his fault, it was our fault. We did that mistake of thinking that one sales guy to solve our problem. We had him go to a couple of clients, etc. We realized that we don't have appetite, and 6 months we have to ask him to leave. So I think those are the things which are important for us to realize, that it's a process which cannot happen by a single soul. So, and another big mistake which we did, right, as Maneesh rightly said, that it's the entire organization has to start thinking sales. So it cannot be what we have seen in our organization also. What happens that I'm responsible for sales and business development, but my other founders, they do not have that great mindset on the sales. So they solve the engineering problems, right? So that's also becomes a kind of important for all of us. So yeah. So would maybe jump into another, just a time check. I think we'll have to jump into quickly. So shall we, on maybe what we can do was on a M&A question for like M&A point for Maneesh, right? And we see that the topic being revving up revenue, GTM. So what's that growth kind of path? Right, so we have organic and inorganic growth, right? So would like Maneesh to kind of share his ideas around that. We always, not always I would say, that some like we see around M&As are they meant for a large enterprise, or are they meant for companies and SMEs? How do you look at M&A in the kind of audience set which we have today, and what would be that value, or what is that growth sales we can look up?
So I'll share a few examples, but before that, just like to make a couple of points. So first, and I think there are a few myths out there that most people think the acquisitions are done by very large companies, right? I think the fact is that only large acquisitions are generally reported in media. How many of you know that, Cisco used to buy like 100 companies a year, right? And a lot of these would be in 5, 10, 20, 30, $50 million range, which they don't even have to report in the news, right? Given their size. One of our existing clients, they're just a Series A product company, right? We have done an acquisition for them, which was almost $2 million plus, which they didn't even have the money, but their investors backed them up, and it really added significant value to what they were doing, right? So the first myth is this, that I think everybody needs to understand that now M&A is done for various different reasons, and I'll talk about that, but it can be done by smaller companies, even $5 to $10 million companies as well.
Sure. Sorry, Maneesh, just to interrupt that. Why M&A? Right.
So, okay. So ultimately, I think every company out there needs, I shouldn't say every, but most companies need an exit path for either to get liquidity for themselves or to give liquidity to their investors, right? IPO is the ultimate dream for most companies to achieve that, right? But that probably happens in, 0.01% cases. The rest of them, do M&A, right? But there is a more significant business value which is achieved through M&A. So most companies who acquire, they're doing it for either they want to just bulk up the revenue and become a leader in their own space, or they're doing it to get into a new geography, or get into a new vertical, get into a new practice, hire a great team, or hire a piece of technology which can really fuel their growth. So there are n number of reasons, and depending on what the reason is, the size and what you look for in the target companies change.
Sure, and the building of the revenue, right? We are saying that if we have an example here. I think we talked about it just before, during the lunch. We have an example here of
I'll give examples. First, on the product side, I think everybody here knows Razorpay. one of the leading payment gateways. Now, last year they did one acquisition, which was EasyTap, which was almost, I think, in the couple of $100 million range, which was clearly to strengthen their market leadership. They did another acquisition, which was Curlec, which was actually in Malaysia, because they wanted to expand into other geographies in Southeast Asia, which was more closer to like $10 million range. They did another acquisition, which is Terrafin Labs, which was not even $1 million, right? But this was in consumer lending, which is where they also wanted to get into. And they found a company which had an interesting piece of technology, and they got a great founder to continue working with them, right? So here is an example of a unicorn. I think the last valuation was probably close to $10 billion. They did all stripes of acquisitions, right? Sure. In the IT services space, we have lots of examples. I see Avinash sitting here, Infobeans. He did an acquisition of Eternus last year. And Eternus had built a good capability in Salesforce, and that gave a good team and a good partnership with Salesforce. And right, there is Devendra Deshmukh. I don't know whether, yeah, there is Devendra. Oh, I see Jitendra as well. So Devendra's company was acquired by a private equity player, Axion Labs. So that was also in the last, I think, year, 15 months. And again, these are two, and they're still there, right? Even though Devendra and his co-founder sold the company, is very much engaged in building out the portfolio with this private equity player. In fact, he's talking to me this morning about that they want to acquire other companies now to bulk up and build a much bigger company.
Yeah, right? and the value which we get, right, of getting into a scale, right, the size is tremendous. Because it helps in your further sales, right? Helps in the entire ecosystem that you get access to a lot of, I think, lot of things which you would not get at a particular scale. So we are saying that if you want to rev up your revenue, it is one of the channels, one of the paths for you to take to seriously consider M&A options. Right, and in fact, while chatting with Maneesh during the lunchtime, I said I need some time from you later. Right.
Actually, I want to add one more thing. See, the M&A happens, I think, so there is a saying that companies are not sold, they are bought, right? So it's not that you just wake up one day and say, "Mere ko bechna hai," and then you start just saying, okay, who is going to buy me, right? Yeah. So I think it starts with building strategic relationships, strategic partnerships. And that's what I think leads to a lot of the go-to-market channels, right? I think every company, irrespective of their size, even in their very first year, should build partnerships, right? Ways to build channels, to sell, to collaborate. And over time, some of these may also end up becoming your M&A home, right? Sure. Where somebody makes an offer and you accept it, right? Yeah. So you have to get your name out there, your brand out there, your capability out there, and it starts with building these relationships, right?
Can I just ask Reena about partnerships and channels? How do you look at sitting like a
I think it works very well for us. Alliances and partnership, it can really widens your horizon. It probably gets you sometimes a foot into the door, into the deal. As I would say, typically, I was just discussing, having a chat with my son, and where he said that, he said in your days you had one superpower and you had one Superman, but in our days it's all about collaboration. You've got the entire Avengers coming together to solve the world's problems. So I think that's what I would say, really leveraging alliances and partnerships to take it forward. This also is another marketing strategy that you could also take it along.
No, absolutely. Like it's a common it's an imperative now, right? You have to look at collaboration, strategic alliances with other companies, complementing companies with the products and products. We have been doing it for ages. All the Microsofts and Oracles of the world, they run a partnership program, but we have to start looking beyond it. That how do we partner in the complementary to other.
And it's about co-creating together. That's what today's world is. The earlier, I think the earlier saying was if you couldn't compete, buy them. But today it is if you can't compete, co-create together. I think that's...
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually just sharing a quick thing that I like, can you imagine AWS making a presentation to the GCP, in the GCP office about what Amazon AWS does? I was there in one of the kind of Google Center, and I was amazed at looking at why AWS is presenting here, right? So they are competitor. So, but they are collaborating. They are saying enterprise like Kyndryl or any other enterprise, they would not go with one vendor. So they have to go with multiple vendors. So these vendors have to align themselves. And similarly, we can kind of look at such opportunities around. So I think we have, we'd like to kind of, we have top on the hour, but I think we can just request for an extra 5-7 minutes, and want to open it for Q&A, and please kind of feel free to ask us questions. We'd love Maneesh and Reena to respond to any of the questions if you have. Yeah, I think there, if you could get the mic turn, please. Yeah.
So good afternoon, everyone. This is Krishnakant Mane. I'm a fintech co-founder of a company. So I want to take this discussion back to the initial part. So we were talking about, the revenue strategies, and, as you rightly said, as everyone rightly agrees that there is no one super bullet to, say that if someone asks, okay, what is the ultimate mantra, you cannot. So we have put a strategy in place. Like in our case also, we have a foreign direct investor involved, and we have strategies in place. Now, of course, as we rightly said, that there has to have some patience. So the revenue may not start pouring in, and here is the tricky part on which my question specifically is. So what are the exact indicators? So if you're not getting the revenues all right, but I think as entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, we can at least see some indicators which can say that, okay, we are not getting these revenues now, but it's very likely that our policies are right, our strategies are correct, and we should continue with it. I'm asking this question because it's a tricky situation. When you see that the revenues are not coming, you might just rapidly experiment and change something. And in the hindsight, after 6-7 months, you say, hey, actually what I was doing was actually right. I shouldn't have changed it. Or it might be the other way around, that we keep waiting, and then we realize that the strategy should have changed. So what are those peculiar indicators which one must watch out for to see whether things are right or wrong without the revenue itself?
Sure. Would Maneesh or Reena would like to take it?
Sure. So I think that's a great question. And see, first thing, as you start doing the sales calls, I think you have to be continuously monitoring that what is it that the prospects are telling you, especially if they're not converting. First of all, are they acknowledging the need that whatever it is that you're selling, the product or offering, do they say that, yes, I need this, I want this, right? And I have the, so that's the first part. The second is, are they not converting because they're saying that I've got better, I found your competitors who are better, so there are other people who do this, who fulfill my need better? Or is it a pricing issue, or is it a timing issue that I need it, but I don't need it now, I can wait for another 6 months. So these are all the things you have to continuously monitor. If you are not finding much success in converting, then another thing you may do is do user interviews. That go out and talk to 20, 30, 40 prospects, and don't try and sell. Just try and gauge more from their need for your offering, and get some insights. Yeah. So that would be one thing that I would do.
I think also you could measure your share of voice. I think that would also help. Probably even if your revenue is not coming in, but let's say your share of voice is there, it would help you in the valuation game later, right? So you could look at that itself. Rather making a very hasty exit, I would say, take it along and do course correction like what Maneesh said.
Thank you. This is
Thanks
one
a lot.
question. Yeah, I know. Can we take just one there?
Sorry, we are running out short of time.
Okay, we can take it offline then.
Yeah, that will be better.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe we can just hear his question. Just
Yes.
give us 30 seconds. Here, please.
So we spoke about customer acquisition cost.
Can be a bit louder, please.
Is this better?
Yeah.
We spoke about customer acquisition cost towards the start of the session.
Yeah.
For product engineering and IT services, when you are just breaking that ceiling from Orbit 1 to Orbit 2 and looking at $200,000 plus ticket sizes, essentially, what should be the ideal customer acquisition cost?
What would be ideal customer acquisition cost?
If you're looking at multi-channel marketing, multi-channel brand building and development activities, what kind of customer acquisition
Is this B2B, B2C?
B2B.
B2B. Okay, B2B is a little kind of a difficult one to kind of put together a cost. I think we can take it offline.
Yeah,
we can share some
we'll be happy
ideas
to
offline,
talk offline.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. We'll take it offline.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for this wonderful discussion. Yes, a small token of gratitude from our end. Would like Thank you.